The time has come. I need to create web app. And in the beginning, when we create new application, it looks like this. Something pretty simple, clean and nice. We have a user who is going to communicate with our front-end application, which then talks to some kind of web API in order to get some data. Web API provides response usually in a JSON, usually in a same or similar format, and our web app should have a single client to talk to our web API. Basically, that's the simple starting point for any type of web application. But I also know that in future my app is going to communicate with a couple different web APIs. It might look like this. We have a front-end app, we have couple web APIs. In this example, we have authentication web API, we have web API to work with people, and web API to work with catalog. Unfortunately, I know that in future we'll have more web APIs. It might be not only JSON-based web APIs, it might be XML, gRPC or SOAP. I also know that response data or request response data for our API might have a different formats, like this camel case type of response, or probably Pascal case, or even the data might have a different response like objects or envelopes, where we have response with the data, with the result, or with some metadata, and the data we asked from the web API. In this case, my front end should have a couple different web API clients, and each web API client might have different data transformation rules in it. Like this one can talk with a camel case, and this one with a Pascal based response types, and this is with some kind of different formats and everything. And also each backend should have its own coarse configuration, just because we will ask for the data from the web browser respecting coarse rules. The situation might become a bit more complicated when we introduce a couple front-end applications, or like in this case, another one client, which is mobile app. It means that different rules for the web API communications should be replicated in the mobile application as well, probably using different language or different technology. So we have duplication code in a front-end app and in the mobile app. To be honest, I really do not want to have a couple front ends to talk with different web APIs and have logic in different places. For that, I decided to use something what's called backend for front end. In this solution, we have another one web API service which works as a backend for front end, as a static assets host for my web front end, as well as a reverse proxy in case when we need just to pass or allow some requests to some other APIs. And with that, it has a different web API clients for no matter how many web APIs we're going to use, but this backend for front end works as a single entry point for all clients, including front end and mobile application. Also, in this composition, we don't need to care about coarse, just because all web API requests are going to be executed from a backend type of application, and our front end will talk with only one single entry point. Let's try to see some code. So we have authentication API, people API, and catalog API. I'm going to open Visual Studio Here are my external API, like people API or catalog API. If I start this composition, we could see that, for example, people API, when we ask data here, we will have this type of response. If we try to find catalog API, the response is a little bit different format, like a result plus some kind of metadata. I don't want to handle all this logic in the front-end app. Instead, I have another one piece of logic, which is backend for front-end, which acts as a reverse proxy for all web APIs. Let me start my front end. This is a front end. The first thing I'm going to do, I will try to login. Here we executed login web API request to our backend for front end. Let's find this code in our backend for front end. In the controllers, we have account controller with a login method. This login method does incoming message transformation, then external web API invocation, and then transformation of the response to the single format. With that, I successfully can log in via external API using my backend for front end. Let's, for example, go to categories. Categories is another one external web API. This one. We have an entry point in our backend for front end, which then talks to specific client request, which then does request and response transformation in order to talk with the catalog web API. Here we can create new category, for example. This is our new demo category. I can execute web API requests. Here we have a put request to our single entry point. I also for sure can delete category. Okay. From my front-end point of view, I have only one single Axios HTTP client which talks to a single web API. All the authentication logic encapsulated in a single place. All the rules of how to deal with HTTP also in a single place. All the requests logic common for all API calls also in a single place. Plus we have different clients or logic. For example, this HTTP communication for a category and this HTTP communication for a person. If we try to get some person, we also might see that all requests go to the single entry point, like that. Single entry point for all HTTP communication. Here my front end talks to a single backend for front end proxy, which then talks to the people API. With this composition, I don't need to care about course. I don't need to have a duplication of my HTTP communication and request response data transformation. Basically, that's it for the demo. Let's see how it goes, and yeah, have a good day.